This video is sponsored by World of Warships. World of Warships is a PC and free-to-play game. You can unlock some of history's most iconic war vessels and unlock new ships as you prepare to dominate the oceans. It has more than 300 warships, fully detailed and realistic. The game has weather effects, warships customization and upgrades. There are many warship classes for all types of players, from destroyers, battleships and aircraft carriers. If you want explosions and war, then World of Warships is the game for you. Use the code READYFORBATTLE2020 during the registration to get for free 700 doubloons, 7 days premium account, 1,000,000 credits, premier ship USS Charleston with stars and stripes camouflage, and the premium Japanese ship Ishizuchi. See the description for details. World of Warships. Get it today. In an audacious World War II raid, a group of elite frogmen was sent to destroy 2 bridges vital to stopping the Allied advance on Germany. The bridges were at the Dutch town of Nijmegen, and the frogmen were German naval commandos. It's a story that is part of the famous Operation Market Garden, the failed Allied push to capture bridges across the Rhine in September 1944 and end the war by Christmas. That the German Navy was involved in trying to stop the Allies so far from the sea is an aspect of the story that is almost entirely forgotten. But it was a showcase operation for Germany's latest underwater attack force, the Marine Einsatzkommandos. The Germans had been late to employ combat frogmen. The Italians and British had used them on many missions earlier in the war. The British had actually copied the Royal Italian Navy, which had pioneered both closed rebreather sets for divers and special vehicles called pigs or maiali to enable frogmen to effectively mine British ships in harbours. The British developed their own versions of the diving equipment, and the pigs became the Royal Navy's Chariot human torpedoes. Most German effort was directed to the design and production of miniature U-boats that could attack Allied shipping, or their own version of human torpedoes. The difference between the Italian and German versions of these weapons was in the German designs the pilots sat inside enclosed cockpits, breathing oxygen from Luftwaffe aircrew rigs, whereas Italian and British human torpedo operators were exposed to the ocean and wore frogmen equipment. However, during 1944, with defeat only a matter of time, the German Navy began to experiment with Italian-style combat frogmen, forming a special unit of strong swimmers that trained extensively on an island near Venice. In the meantime, the Allies launched an ambitious operation to vault the Rhine into Germany. Operation Market Garden was the brainchild of Field Marshal Sir Bernard Montgomery, consisted of 2 phases. In Phase 1, Market, the 1st Allied Airborne Army would land 3 parachute divisions deep behind enemy lines to seize strategic bridges. The US 101st Airborne Division dropped and captured bridges northwest of Eindhoven at Wegel and Zonn. The US 82nd Airborne Division dropped northeast of them to seize the bridges at Grave and Nijmegen, and the British 1st Airborne Division, with the Polish 1st Independent Parachute Brigade attached, dropped to the extreme north at Arnhem to capture the road bridge over the Rhine and the rail bridge at Oosterbeek. Then in Phase 2, Garden, the British 30 Corps, under Lieutenant General Brian Horrocks, began to advance up a narrow road to relieve each parachute division in turn and hopefully on into Germany. However, German resistance was much stronger than anticipated, and the British troops at Arnhem ended up surrounded and fighting for their lives. In the end, 30 Corps got no further than Nijmegen, and the British at Arnhem eventually surrendered or infiltrated back to Allied lines, the division effectively destroyed. But the Nijmegen bridgehead became a significant threat to the Germans, with the British controlling a salient of territory that could be used for future offensive actions against Germany. Since the capture of the Nijmegen bridges on the 20th of September 1944, British Royal Engineers had immediately set to work improving them so that they could support all types of vehicles, from supply lorries to tanks. Soon, troops, armour and supplies were pouring across to support the Allied bridgehead across the Vaal River. The Germans had successfully eliminated the British paratroopers at Arnhem and were intent on further eliminating the British 30-Corps bridgehead beyond Nijmegen. It was clear that the two bridges spanning the river were the key. If they could be destroyed, the British bridgehead would have its supplies severely curtailed. The bridgehead could then be crushed by a German counter-offensive. Significant amounts of British tanks, artillery and other vehicles would be trapped. German artillery was already zeroed in on both bridges, but the fire was inaccurate and did little damage. The major problem facing the Germans were the heavy anti-aircraft defences that the British had in place at both bridges at Nijmegen. Coupled with a very active Royal Air Force in the skies above, successfully bombing the bridges using aircraft was possible, though risky. Therefore, the German command decided to make destroying the bridges a joint operation between the Luftwaffe and the German Navy. The river Vaal that passed swiftly beneath both of the bridges at Nijmegen, the road bridge and the railway bridge, ran from German-held territory, and once beyond Nijmegen back into German territory. A team of frogmen would enter the river and float down to Nijmegen with large explosive mines. Attached to bridge supports and operated by delayed action fuses, the frogmen would be back into German territory when the mines detonated. This operation was considered so important that it was placed under the direct command of Reichsführer SS Heinrich Himmler. Speed was of the essence. The 12 frogmen from Marine Einsatzkommandos 60 and 65 were driven from Venice to a position close to Nijmegen. 6 explosive charges were prepared. Each was a Type S naval mine, containing 1,220 pounds of hexanite high explosive. 2 for the railway bridge and 6 for the road bridge. But a lot could go wrong. The frogmen had no experience with the large explosive mines. There could be no practice runs, and no one knew the extent of the British defences. There would definitely be sentries, searchlights on the bridges undoubtedly. But what about floating cable booms or underwater barbed wire that could tear a frogman to pieces? The Luftwaffe portion of the operation to destroy the bridges at Nijmegen went into action on the night of the 26th to 27th of September, 24 hours before the frogmen launched their assaults. 19 Junkers Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers of a special night attack squadron bombed the bridges, causing only superficial damage. In the early morning hours of the 27th of September, 42 Focke-Wulf FW-190 fighter bombers, supported by Messerschmitt Bf-109 fighters, also attacked. In intense dogfighting with RAF and Royal Canadian Air Force fighters, 45 German aircraft were shot down, but the 190s managed to hit both bridges, though the damage was not critical. Now it was the turn of the Kriegsmarine's Frogmen commandos. Working in concert, the frogmen and the chargers would float at night downriver, using ropes to snag the chargers to the bridge piers. The mines would then sink and arm themselves automatically. The frogmen would then be carried by the current to German territory and recovered, guided by coloured rockets fired into the sky. Many of the frogmen thought that it was a suicide mission. Himmler briefed the men himself at his forward headquarters. It was a direct order from the Führer himself. Those bridges must be destroyed, he said. At 2000 hours on the 28th of September, the 12 frogmen entered the Vaal a few miles upstream from the 2 bridges at Nijmegen. They wore black rubber suits, hoods and swimming fins. Each man's oxygen rebreather had enough oxygen for 30 minutes only. So much of the mission would take place at the surface. The first 4 frogmen left with their chargers for the railway bridge. The other 8 followed later. The water was very cold, but the frogmen had lots of determination and they were all strong swimmers. The railway bridge party arrived first. Drag lines fixed between the chargers enabled them to straddle the bridge pier. Orders were given to flood and sink the chargers, which then armed themselves. The second party made it to the road bridge. They experienced some trouble handling their charges into position, 2 men almost out of oxygen by the end. Meeting up, the cold and exhausted but elated frogmen swam for 6.5 miles downstream until they saw coloured rockets in the distance. Making their way to the riverbank, they assumed they were in German territory. As they crossed fields, carrying their fins, a voice in English challenged them. They fled for the river under fire. 1 frogman fell wounded, another took a bullet through the chest. Of the 12 frogmen involved in the operation, 3 died of wounds sustained and only 2 made it back to German lines, the rest being captured. The 2 that made it back, Heinz Breckschneider and his teammate Walter Jäger, were both awarded the German Cross in gold, second only to the Knight's Cross for gallantry. As for the mines, they detonated right on schedule. The railway bridge's pier was destroyed, the central span of the bridge falling into the Vaal River, closing it to all traffic. At the road bridge, the detonations blew a 60-foot gap in the bridge's road deck, but no significant damage was done to the pier or the main superstructure. The road bridge was quickly repaired by Royal Engineers using part of a Bailey bridge across the gap. This bridge was back in service within 48 hours. Royal Canadian Engineers were assigned to make repairs to the seriously damaged railway bridge. It was a major disruption to the Allies. The German frogmen operation at the Nijmegen bridges can be considered very successful and remains a fascinating endnote to the drama of Operation Market Garden. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and share, and also visit my new audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon, details in the description box below.